2nd, 2021. Our first order of business will be to approve the minutes from our last meeting, and I would like to call on Commissioner Blair for that.
Mr. Chairman, I find the minutes to be in order, and without objection, I move for their approval.
Have a motion. We need a second. We have a second. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. The first department to come will be our Highway Department if they have a report. Good evening.
Ben Friend, Mr. Brooks was unable to attend, Public Works Engineer in his place. I don't necessarily have a report, but we are requesting to move forward to apply for a brick grant. We have an area of concern that we are looking at improving some drainage structures, and it involves a kind of little complex area. And the brick grant that we are hoping to move forward to apply for would be for the study for the feasibility of this project that we would like to undertake. It would come back and tell us if the project in fact would be feasible for us to undertake as a public works department to help improve some structures that would in turn help improve drainage in some problematic areas that we have had over in the area in between the Stones River and the railroad tracks on the other side of US 41. FEMA, these grants are split 25% county funded and federally funded the other 75%.
Is that the end of your report?
As
far as the grant?
Grant, has anybody got any questions, I guess, for further in detail about that?
You said it was a 25 match?
Yes, 25-75. County responsible for 25 and federal would cover the 75.
How much are we talking, Mr. Chairman?
How much is the grant for?
I think, if I remember right, we would like to request a grant for $60,000 to cover the engineering study. And the study would reveal to us the feasibility of this project for us. We want to make some, like I said, we want to make some improvements, but we want to do it right. And that's why we're requesting the money to get this study done.
Mayor Ketcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this the property? I talked to our road superintendent a week or so ago, I believe, with Mike. Is this the property close to Shores Road?
No, sir, it is not. Not that property. This would be...
This is in the Smyrna District, Burleson Lane, Lee Road.
Doug, come up.
Doug, could you come up and kind of clear us up on this?
Because we were talking about the railroad track, and you remember, am I on the wrong track?
Old Nashville Highway.
Old Nashville Highway, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. This is the area between, if you look on the map that's on your iPads, there's an identified area around I-24 going on to Old Nashville Highway and then out to 41 Broad Street. That's the area that's in question. You'll recall that there have been some of the FEMA buyouts in this area. It's an area that has a lot of drainage issues, and we're aware of those. This brick grant would, as Ben was saying, would allow the highway department and the county to identify what improvements, if any, could be made to help alleviate some of those drainage issues. could recommend a plan going forward, and then as part 2 of that, there might be an opportunity for another grant application to actually help fund some of those improvements.
So this was that area that Steve Irwin had complained about when he was
believe that's
commissioner,
correct.
backs up to the old boat plant there on Old Nashville Highway.
That area in there.
That flooding, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We actually approved a PUD for
In that
this
same
area.
general area, yes, sir, that's
Do
right.
you know if it's within this outlined area?
Right. Well, without delving just real deep into that, there were a lot of drainage. You're talking about Sycamore Grove is what you're talking about. That one had a lot of drainage concerns. That one actually had quite a bit of a review on the construction drawings before we would turn that one loose because of the drainage issues
Okay,
out
so
there.
you really haven't turned that subdivision loose?
I believe they're out, I think they are working on it now. The subdivision has been approved, but
Right.
before we let them start construction, they had to go through a pretty thorough plan review to make sure it wasn't going to cause any other issues.
But this is part of
This
the
is more
process to
global.
correct it?
Yeah, this is more global for that whole area. Right, this would help that whole area.
So, Mr. Chairman, Doug, I believe Mike had talked about that, actually CSX had come in and put a large drainage pipe underneath the railroad track, and then they came back in and plugged it back up. So it's creating, similar to Waverly, kind of a damming issue. So
Our concern, that pipe is there under the railroad tracks, and our concern is from that point on downstream between there and the Stones River with the existing structures that are in place, because they are much smaller than what is available under the railroad tracks. And we want to be able to increase, not increase, we want to be able to improve downstream from there, and in order to do that, that's
We
why
need
we
that
need this study,
study.
to make sure it's feasible for us to be able to be
I
done.
told
And
him I
then-
was good with the study, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Dodd.
And the grant it would be for the 60,000. So our portion would be 15,000.
That's correct.
And
If-
how
if
was this area determined to be our #1 priority for this grant as opposed to Deerfield Park and Burleson Lane and Doe Lane and Spike Trail in my district, parallel to Gresham Lane? What was this? Did this have more buyouts? We have buyouts in my district. Do you know what determined this as #1?
I think the water is deeper.
Maybe.
I don't have any determining factors.
I
This
just
is
live on
something
Deerfield, on Braxton, Bragg, and Deerfield, so I know the water's deeper here than what it was where I used to live.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions about this? Mr. P.?
What's the long-term objective if you get this money? I mean, is it going to tell you whether you can continue development in that area or whether it needs to be shut off? What's the outcome of this?
It'll tell us for the work that we would like to do for improving these downstream structures, whether or not it would be feasible for us to actually go in and undertake that project. With the study would show like what size structures would be needed to be put in place, and an estimated cost total and things like that. And then we would look at that and determine if it was actually feasible for the Public Works Department to move forward with that, or if it was just too far of a stretch for us to handle.
Couple more questions. Is this the property that, if you're heading toward Murfreesboro on 24 from Smyrna area, there's a place I've always seen water back up when we've had heavy rains that gets almost over to the interstate side, and it looks like there's a subdivision up on the upper end, and some houses get affected by that. Is that area? Hard to say from my description.
Yeah, without me looking at anything, I can't answer that without that picture right in front of me.
Okay. Another question, maybe Doug can answer this one too. I know years ago when I was on planning, Nashville, of course, they used to have a lot of historic flooding around Mill Creek area. and they did some studies for specific drainage basins. I forget how much those studies were, but it basically let them know, what the runoff had to be, help the engineers do the calculations. Is this, that's kind of what my question was earlier, is this like a drainage basin study for this particular basin, or is, that looks like a pretty small area, is why I'm asking that.
That is that particular drainage basin that they would be looking at.
Just part of it, I assume, because that's not that large, or is that the entire basin that you're looking at in this yellow highlight?
Yes, that is the drainage basin for that area. Yes.
What's the name of that drainage basin?
I don't have a name for the drainage basin necessarily. The little yellow drainage basin that you see came off the Stream Stats website. That you go in there and you pick your point, and it calculates that drainage basin that drains to that certain point there and calculates that for you.
What I'm getting at, or trying to pull out here, is what I've seen of drainage studies, they're kind of localized.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't go all the way back to where it hits the Stones River, and I heard you mention that,
Right.
then you don't really have a good feeling of what's happening downstream, because you could affect somebody down in Walter Hill.
It will include what all the way to the Stones River. From that, the highlighted yellow area there shows to the railroad tracks, if I'm not mistaken. But it will also, the engineering study will include all the way to the Stones River. So that goes under the railroad tracks and then under State Route 2, US Highway 41, over toward the river, under Jernigan, and under Florence Avenue, and then onto the river. All of that area will be included in that study.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Who owns that biggest raw tract there? Do you know, Doug? Do you know who owns that largest land that the study ends at I-24? That's right there. Is that the Sazerac distillery?
Right, in that area.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, without looking at it more deep, that map on there is pretty general, so. Yeah.
Commissioner Harris.
Doug, we just approved 2 buybacks last month. Are these close in vicinity to this?
Yes, sir, they are. They're within that,
Yeah.
So we're
the
looking
study
at
area.
probably, I can't remember how much we gave, 200,000?
Somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't think it was quite that much, but somewhere in that
You're asking for
neighborhood.
15 to do a study on this.
Which would hopefully, in time,
Yes, sir.
identify ways to maybe increase or improve the drainage in that area. So maybe we don't have to have as many buybacks in the future for this area especially.
I make a motion that we approve his request.
We have a motion, we need a second. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Piercy.
Yes. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from the Building Codes Department from Ms. Bell.
Good evening, Mayor Ketchum, Chairman, and Commissioners. All right, so for the month of October, building codes issued a total of 308 permits. 74 of those were single-family dwellings, for a total revenue of $118,999, which is up a little bit from last month and from this month last year. We did a total of 1,931 inspections and drove just a little better than 8,000 miles. And if nobody has any questions on that, I'll move on to development tax and school facilities tax. So this was, this month, Public Works falls on the second workday of the month, so I didn't have a whole lot of time I really was going to try and crunch some numbers for you guys this month, and I promise you I will devote some time to that next month. Where it applies to school facilities tax, we're starting to see an increase in the school facilities tax and a decrease in the development tax. So I really wanted to break down for you of the school facilities tax receipts that were issued, and I wanted to let you know how many of those were single-family dwellings, how many were townhomes, how many were additions, and the average square foot of each of those categories. So next month, I did crunch some numbers right before I came over here, so I have a real rough estimate, but next month, I'll give you a better report. So the month of October, school facilities tax, we collected $391,943.50. That brings us, for school facilities tax only, to a fiscal year accumulative total of $975,103.20. We also collected $69,750 in development tax, for a total of those two numbers of $1,497,103.20. So of the school facilities tax, just those numbers, we issued, there was a total of 219 projects. So with each of those projects, of course, we have two receipts because we have the first 50% and the second 50%. And I think I told you last month and possibly even the month before that we're finding that the developers are paying both payments when they come and pay their development tax before they get their permits, and that's still true. So of those 219 projects, 154 of them were townhomes for an average of about 1,691 square feet. 52 of them were single-family dwellings with an average square foot of a little better than 2,500. And the other 13 there was a couple of mobile homes and additions. And their square footage varied from a couple hundred to about 800.
We're above the numbers that we estimated then. 'Cause we estimated when I did this, so our numbers are 2,200, 2,300 square feet, so you're at 2,500.
Well, our average square foot home is about 2,681.
So
We
we're up
calculated
300
that when we
square
were,
feet? That's
yeah,
good.
when we were doing numbers, when we first started to look at the school facilities tax, and I pulled a report of the average square footage throughout Rutherford County, and we came to 2,681, I think it was, and that's holding true. We're right above 2,500 just this month.
Well, the one that I'm excited about is townhomes, 1,691, because I think when me and the mayor was doing this, I estimated like 1,100. So
Right.
I'm way off, and that's great news.
Well, apartments were around 1,100, and townhomes are getting a little bigger. The average townhome ranges anywhere from about 14 to about 1,700 square feet, right in around there. So we kind of, I think when we discussed this, we kind of concluded that townhomes were going to be pretty much a wash. You know, it was going to be either a little above 1,500 or just a little below. So, yeah, I mean, 1,691 is better than what we thought.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Should have asked.
We'll overlook it this time. Anyone else, have you finished your report complete?
I just have zoning enforcement. Did anybody else have any more questions on school facilities or development tax?
So our average development tax previously has been $6 million, I believe, in the last few years.
For the entire year?
Yeah.
Yeah, right now we're sitting at almost 1.5. This time last year, we were sitting at 1.8.
So these cumulative numbers, school facilities and development tax at this point, at the monthly averages, will get us to 4.5 million total. Am I playing the averages too soon?
Yes.
You think- okay,
Yes, I
enough
think
said.
so.
Enough
Yes.
said. Okay.
We're just now starting this past month, October, September a little bit, but October's been by far our biggest month for school facilities tax, and that will just increase. As the development tax lots, the ones that are grandfathered and are devoted to the development tax, as they decrease, we'll see more of the school facilities tax, the lots that school facilities tax applies to. So that number will continue to increase. right? And zoning enforcement, we had a total of 158 inspections for the month of October. And that concludes my report.
Does anyone have any more questions for Ms. Bell?
Motion to approve the report.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Next, we will hear from Planning and Engineering. Mr. DeMoss.
Hello again, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. I've got a couple of things I want to talk about before getting to our rezoning report. The first, of course, is our available lot inventory. As you can see on the, I guess that's page 5 of the first, or 5 of 8 of the first document on your iPads, you'll see our total available lot inventory is down to about 704. That's down about 50-ish lots from last month. We didn't see a whole lot of new, larger plat recordings this past month, so that really just takes into account all the building permits that were issued in those subdivisions. At last month's meeting, I believe, Commissioner Blair, you had asked about looking at a report that would compare the number of lots under the development tax, kind of what Ms. Bell was just talking about, versus those that are under the school's facilities tax. I want to give a shout out to Brad Talley in our IT department. He was able to come and help me do that. I was looking at YouTube videos and not making much progress. He was over there in about 5 minutes, had it finished. So kudos to him and thank you to him especially. But I put a second report on your iPads tonight. It's called, I think it's Development Tax and schools facility, SFD lots. You'll see the report itself is about 8 pages. At the end of page 6, you can see that those are all, that first part of the report, that is all, excuse me, I guess that's page 7. The 604 is the total number of available lots that are out there right now. Of that 700 plus we just talked about, that is still under the development tax, that was grandfathered under the development tax. That very last page, you can see it's pretty short. That's going to get longer, but as you can see, there's 100 lots that are recorded right now that are under the school's facilities tax. So kind of getting back to what Tanya was just talking about, that lot total that you see for the schools, for the development tax, excuse me, on page 7 of 8 of the PDF, that number will continue to decrease. And then that number on the ones dealing with the schools facility tax, those plats recorded after June 30th of this year, that will, well, it should go up, but it'll also fluctuate because at the same time as you're having plats recorded, you're going to be seeing lots being developed and everything like that. So I hope that's kind of what you were asking for in that regard. So that just give you an idea. As one goes down, the other one again will go up, but it will fluctuate in time as well. Does anybody have any specific questions on either of those available lot inventory reports? All right. If not, I will go ahead and jump into our rezoning report. The first thing I want to mention, you'll see on your agenda there are 4 rezoning applications. You've got REZ 21-009, 1415, and then at the very end you've got 007. I've been having some discussions with the applicants for 007, which is the 4th of the 4 on your iPads under the Planning and Engineering report. They are proposing to make some changes to that, which are probably going to be more than what I'm comfortable bringing to the Board of Commissioners. So I've already told them that we're not moving that one forward. So there's only going to be 3 at your meeting next Wednesday. Again, that'll be 9, 14, and 15. So with that, I will go ahead and get into the report for those 3. The first is for property located along Lascassas Pike. Commissioner P., I believe this is in your district. I will point out that, and this is just an apology on my part, in my haste to get all the reports on here, I neglected to put the pattern book on here that goes along with this. It will be there for the county commission meeting. We do have it. It's just I put everything else on the email thinking I had everything, and then right before I walked over here realized I had forgotten about that. So I apologize for that. It is actually on the iPad. If you were to go back to the October October 11th Planning Commission meeting, you could see it, but that might be a little, in what time I've got, I didn't want to complicate anything, but essentially what they're asking for, this application's been deferred at the Planning Commission, most recently at their August 9th meeting, for them to take a look at some of the drainage issues on this property. They're looking to do a development, it's 108 lots, that's actually down from the 116 lots that they had originally proposed. They also were originally proposing two different products, a single-family detached element. Both of them were detached, but the second part of the element, there was about a dozen or so rear alley loaded lots, which they've done away with, and they are just sticking with the same product throughout of those 108 lots. Each will have at least 3 bedrooms and be at least 1,700 square feet in size. Off-street parking has also been added to their community park. Some of the major issues with this particular application, of course, had to do with traffic. That's always a concern that we had. They are proposing turn lanes to both their entrances. They are proposing to line up to existing streets on the other side of Las Casas Pike, so there'd be improvements, left turn lanes going both directions for both of those. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, Commissioner P. I think we've had that discussion, too, even while they were going through the Planning Commission. The largest concern, however, outside of that was drainage, and after a couple deferrals at the Planning Commission, our engineer, Mike Hughes, felt a lot more comfortable with the drainage plan that they were proposing. Of course, they're going to have to submit more detailed plans as time goes on, should this be approved, but the concept that they came up with and the modeling that they had done, Mr. Hughes felt a lot more comfortable with that. So this application was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission by a vote of 9-1. The second application is for property located along Sims Road, and just bear with me a second as I get over here to that particular report. They would like to zone their property, right now it's zoned residential low density, which is the minimum 1 acre per dwelling unit. They would like to zone it agricultural residential, which is actually a down zone. It's 1 unit per 5 acres. The reason they want to do that is because of the business that he would like to operate on his property. He is going to live on the property, so he'll be home-based in that sense. However, what he wants to do a home-based dog training and puppy sales business. He would construct a building that he would use to provide private lessons, training, and small-scale boarding for their clients. He's indicated the building would be based on what they could afford, but they're looking around 1,500 square feet. He has hours of operation, everything in there. The reason they're asking for the rezoning is because this would be defined as a kennel, which is not allowed as a home-based business, either a minor or a major home-based business. Now, if it's zoned agricultural residential, he can go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special exception to do that out of his house. So that's why he's asking for this. And since he has over 30 acres, he would qualify for that. Just a note of information as well. Approval of the zoning does not approve the business. Okay, they would still have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the special exception on that. So just a word of information on that. Very little discussion on this item. Nobody was there to speak in opposition to this, and it was recommended approved by a unanimous vote by the Planning Commission. The third and final public hearing for next week, this is property located along Elam Road. This is by Mr. Jewel Hale. Just for a way of a little bit of history, a portion of this property, the southern portion, about 3 acres, was zoned services back in 2007 and granted a conditional use permit for storage units. Now, this was under our older zoning code. They had even submitted a site plan. It was approved by the Planning Commission back in November of 2007, but they never did actually build anything. The site plan was approved, but it just kind of went by the wayside. They never did anything else with it. The current owner, however, would like to zone the entire property, the remaining property, which is still zoned RM, residential medium density, to office professional, which would be consistent with what that little piece, 3 acres, is zoned currently. And he would like to do a larger self-storage facility with areas for vehicle and parking and storage on the property. I did include a concept plan with your agenda materials. That's part of the packet that's on your iPads. Again, we can't hold them to that because this is not a planned development, but they would at least give you an idea of what they were looking at. Now, that would have to come through site plan approval and everything. Also, similar to the application we just looked at, approval of the zoning would not approve the ability for him to do mini warehouses on the property. That's a use only allowed as well by special exception in that zone, and he's aware of that. So he would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for approval of the larger storage facility on the remaining property. There wasn't much discussion on this item at the Planning Commission. There were some questions about staff's comfort with office professional as opposed to a PUD request. We felt comfortable with the office professional. The OP district is more of a limited district as compared to some of the commercial zones. So as far as any impact to the area, we didn't think it was going to be substantial in that regard. So that was also recommended approved by a unanimous vote. So those are our 3 rezonings we'll have coming before you next week. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Just back on the one that's over on Las Casas, I noticed it was a 9-1 vote. Most of these have been 10-0. What was the one person that voted against its concern?
Well, they didn't necessarily voice a concern when they did. I was watching that meeting the other day. I'm not entirely sure who it was without looking at the notes from the meeting. I know there was some concerns about just the overall drainage and how they were laying out the property. There's an existing kind of a low area on that property, and I think there were some commissioners that could never quite understand why they were filling that area and routing the water somewhere else. I think it was more of a design issue, was the reason behind that.
Yeah, if you drive that road, you can see that pond.
Yeah. It's very evident in the aerial photos too, so yeah.
Doug, that development, will it be on sewer or
No, that'll be on a
conventional?
step system. It'll be a step system.
On a step system.
Yes, sir.
And the way I understood Mr. P to say they're going to fill that existing hole and turn the water somewhere else?
It'll flow, they would end up flowing it to the east. It's not going to flow on the other side of Las Casas Pike. That's higher, so it's all going to still flow the way that it's trying to flow. But they're going to have to provide they're going to basically fill that, but they're going to have to provide some other drainage basins on that property to take that water so that they're not increasing the flow on adjacent property. Yeah.
Any more questions? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve his report?
Move to approve.
Need a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Very well, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from our Solid Waste Department. Good evening. Very well.
As you can see, we're still picking up trash, as usual. I've got both the landfill report and the convenience center report. We go through landfill first, correct?
Right. Are you ready? We'll go ahead.
Well, I just issued the report for everybody to review if you have any questions.
All right. Does anybody have any questions on the landfill report?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the quarterly visual stormwater examination report is not familiar to me. If it's been in this before, I hadn't noticed it. Anything unusual on it, or is it a typical?
This is the first time I've seen this report, and I think it's something maybe Sandlin had requested for us to have submitted with the report this month.
This looks like 2 rain events of greater than a tenth, and they recorded everything is what it looks like, Chairman. I don't.
Okay. Move on to
No flow out of the, so it doesn't unusual.
Okay, Carrie, do you want to give the convenience center report, or you want us to just view that? And
It's up to you. The convenience center report is right in behind it as well with what we've hauled out at each of the convenience centers as far as the compactor trash and our recycling.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
How are we looking on drivers? I'd heard that we were down a couple, or
We're still 4 short. I have an interview tomorrow, and we've called 2 people, but they did not accept the offer of what we had to offer as far as funds or having to work weekends.
okay. I'll make a motion to approve her report.
Recognized. We need a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. I
Just a
think-
reminder as well, Saturday is the household hazardous waste pickup from 8 until 12. We received an email today stating that the state will only sponsor one event, and after discussion with the mayor, we have decided to opt for the April, and then we will reevaluate if we need to fund one as a county in November in the budget process.
What facility are we using to do this?
It'll still be the Florence Road at the mulching facility. And then I have one budget amendment as well. It should have posted late. For our post-closure care for on-site, we are looking to move $75,000 from contracts with private agencies to contracts for post-closure care. It's the same budget, just moving funds from one line to another.
What do you anticipate those funds being used for?
Sorry?
What do you anticipate those funds being used for?
The $75,000 will just to be handling leachate at the landfill for the remainder of the year.
Have we had any of those previously? Do y'all remember this year, this fiscal year?
Not this fiscal year, no, sir.
It sounded like, because Mac hit us for like $50K 3 times last year.
Let Mr.
Again, I don't
Sandlin
mean to
answer that
put you on
question,
the
please.
spot, but yeah, that's...
Come and inform us, Mr. Sandlin. Give your part of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Mayor. I was going to come and help her because basically I'm trying to keep the wheels on the bus since our solid waste director left. And Tanya has done an absolutely wonderful job keeping the wheels on the bus out at the getting all our convenience centers and schools picked up. So hats off to her and her hard efforts in keeping that done. What this is we have, our solid waste director's last day, I went around with him plus a few times before he left, after he gave notice. And we had a leachate breakout. And so we need to do a repair on it. And we did a repair, but we also reported to the state, TDEC. And when we do that, it keeps us out of a fining position and lets them know that we have leachate and we're collecting it, and we need to come take a look at it, make sure we're doing it properly. And so we did. And but within doing that, we've been pumping quite a bit of leachate. And so it's with the past months plus October, it's depleting. I think we're at 54,000 right now, and we only had 50 in the account. So we hit it 3 times last year on bumping those numbers up because of pumping leachate. Depends on how much rain we've got and all that sort of stuff. But within doing that, we're not just wanting to put a Band-Aid on it. I've contacted Triad, and I'll give you all that report in just a second if you want to. But that's the reason for this document here and transferring some funds within our line item.
That conclude your report? Yes. We'll need a motion for the budget amendment to approve that first.
I'll make a motion to approve the
We'll need a second.
transfer of those funds.
Mr. Dodge, a second. Call the roll for us.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Piercy?
Yes. Mr. Sandlin, would you like to finish your report on the landfill?
Yes, sir. And I just got some numbers hot off the press, and let me go ahead and pass these out. I apologize. Didn't get them right up here to you before. This is American Thrift Stores. Last year, this committee, as well as the mayor and full commission, mayor brought these folks in to take a look at them. They offered us an opportunity to do something about like Goodwill. If you remember, this is a thrift stores company. They do about the same thing as Goodwill. They've also got a portion of their funds on selling the furniture and clothes and everything that they receive. They put back to what is it? Make-A-Wish Foundation. That's what couldn't get it off my mind there. Make-A-Wish Foundation. So what they did is they've had a tough go, to be honest with you, on employees, as we all have in our businesses and the county. And but they're fully staffed right now. These numbers show what they've been doing. This is numbers here. Gives you the date over on the far side over there. So this is the last quarter here. So what this does is tell you it's went up 20%, 20% more collections now that people are seeing these boxes at our convenience centers. We have a 54-footer trailer, semi-trailer on 3 locations. Those 3 locations are Weekly, the Rock Crusher, and Sand Hill in Laverne. And those, that's where they accept good furniture, just like Goodwill does. And I hate to keep y'all using Goodwill, but that's what we have here. But they're going to be starting to get more American thrift stores here locally. But they take good clothes, shoes, purses, all that sort of stuff, furniture, good furniture. It might have a nick on it or something, or needs to be tightened up on a leg or something of this or that, or a chair or something. But they take that, and instead of it going to the landfill, they put it in these containers. And so this gives you some numbers here. These are the only 3 54-footers we have. The others is a box. And you may have seen those small boxes, and they've placed those in here. Now they've already, with talking with their representative there today, they've figured out 3 more places that they would love to get a 54-foot trailer in. And that would be the Bradeville, Amival, and Walter Hill locations. Now, we may not be able to get a 54-foot trailer in here. We're going to see if we can, or maybe we end up having to put two of these boxes in there because they're really becoming popular. Now, the low-volume one is Leanna, Craner Road, and Rockvale right now. But I think as soon as they start seeing these boxes and knowing what they do, we're getting some of them picked up twice a week. So they're working. So kudos there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
when we're doing all these convenience centers and updating them and all that, did you have in there a place for this?
Yes.
54?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That was part of the plan of trying to make sure that we can put a 54-footer in there. It keeps it out of the dry. They can put more furniture in these because these boxes are really pretty much just clothes and shoes and stuff. So, but they are working.
Is there someone available to help them put it in a 54-foot trailer, or are they on their own
Well, I'm sorry.
when they bring reusable furniture and stuff?
Oh, yeah. They're, at the 54-footers, they have employees there.
Okay.
And she was telling me today that they are fully staffed. So that's good. They've been having some issues. They have had issues with keeping staff. It's not the most exciting job to sit there and wait for somebody to bring furniture or shoes or clothes to you, but they said they're fully staffed today.
Mr. Chairman, she has found an outlet for us in northern Georgia, and they're going to be bringing boxes in. They're like the steel shipping containers. One end will be open, and we can start taking mattresses. Instead of people taking them out in the country and dumping them, they'll start taking them. They have an outlet where they can recycle. They take all the springs and the wood and everything out of it and do something with it down in Georgia. So it's a good opportunity working with those folks once they start bringing those boxes in.
That's going to be huge. Yes,
It'll
sir.
help keep them off my road and Mr. P's road.
Mr. Chairman,
Everybody's sleepy out there.
now American thrift stores, they're for-profit. They're just giving a portion
Yes, sir.
to, do we know, is there a percentage that they have described as to what they give
It was in
back?
your documentation. I can look that up for you. I don't know right off the top of my head,
I
but
didn't recall it either.
But they've
Make-A-Wish.
identified there's 8 or 10 children just from Rutherford County that are on
Yes.
the Make-A-Wish list.
Yes.
And all the money that they get that comes from Rutherford County will go back to the children in this county.
talking about leachate a while ago, I think we've pumped, we're trying to pump 2 to 3 trailers a day. So that's one reason why that's coming up. But I mentioned that Triad, I got them involved because, for one, I hadn't met Triad and talked with them out at the landfill. And so we met out there and we talked. We've run the drone and gotten our square footage, and they're doing those calculations right now of what's left on our C&D site, if there's any left, because we haven't capped that and topped it yet. So personally, and I'm not an engineer, and I'm not your solid waste director, but I think through Triad's viewpoint and TDEC's viewpoint, because I've gotten real familiar with those two guys, and that part of our leachate problem here on this side is because of our C&D site. Our C&D site hasn't been finalized cap because we had a portion of it there in case, heaven forbid, another tornado or another catastrophe in Rutherford County, that we have to take C&D, out there, construction demolition for houses like in a tornado or something, or a flood or whatever. And so we haven't been taking any. We've left it like that in case a situation happens. So they're getting back with me. Matter of fact, I talked with Jeff today with Triad, and he'll be getting with me and the mayor next week as far as what he's found out numbers-wise, what's left, what we should do as far as capping it and sealing it off here so no more water is going through that C&D site and causing us leachate issues. So I think that will fix that problem for sure and for good.
Commissioner Harris.
One of the things, me and Commissioner P, Chairman P, we had a problem with MAC concerning Milton Construction. And so I noticed on here that it's for the month, $8,000. Are you or our acting solid waste director, are we monitoring this?
Yes.
So you are getting that together?
Yes.
Satisfied with that, Robert?
I've been looking at the hours, looking at what they're doing, how many people that are out there, talked with the guys that are out there working and what they're doing. We're tweaking that, I'll put it that way, nicely. We're tweaking the issues that has been working out there, maybe hadn't been working exactly the way I would think it should be working. And so they are clocking a time clock, like you had asked, and or the commission had asked, and I think it started here. But they are clocking a time clock, and this last week, for instance, it was, I think, 80-something hours that was actually clocked, but only 60-something hours on equipment was actually charged to us. Because you've got downtime, you've got lunches, you've got wet days or off days or only so many people. And then this last week, there was only one working all week there because we weren't moving dirt and we weren't doing things, and so it was a much lesser cost. So you'll see some changes there as well. Good question. I appreciate that. We had a little snafu last week, right, Tanya, with Republic. We had a line about a mile long. I don't want to say a mile long, but it was long. And we had trucks backed up. We had, I think, 3 or 4 of our guys over there waiting. We had 5 guys over there waiting, as well as a lot of other businesses lined up, and it was really abnormal. I haven't seen that. I don't know how many times y'all have had that to happen, but Tanya called me. I called Republic to see what was going on. They had 10 pieces of equipment, and 7 of them were down. So for different reasons. warranty work wasn't done right, parts hadn't come in, things hadn't been fixed, and then, of course, stuff had just broke down. So Mr. Clausen with Republic was very nice and told us he had signed about $500,000 in POs that day, and he didn't know how corporate was going to think about that, but he had to get some other equipment from other states even to come and help them maintain and to carry on cover and what else they needed to do. And so if we would come back at 5 in the morning, and Tanya got on the horn and scheduled that, and we've got some really great employees that wanted to come in at 5 and get in line to get our stuff out so we could keep our convenience centers open. And I really appreciated those guys and Tanya on getting that fixed quickly. So it took us a couple of days, 3 days, really, I'll go ahead and say the rest of the week to kind of catch up to that snafu, but that's things that happen, and they were more cooperative than getting things done, and we appreciate that. The last thing is, and I was going to bring it to you, we were getting ready to get fined from TDEC on my first day out there. And I guess I don't think I cried, but I was probably close to the TDEC inspector. And I said, come on, this is my first day. You're going to write me up on helping out here. I'm just trying to keep the wheels on the bus. So we talked about it, and we've got some slopes out there that haven't been sowed. And I said, if you'll give me a couple of weeks to get some prices, I'll get you some green grass on there. So I went through the price we've had from $40,000 doing 5 acres to, I think, $500, us doing it ourselves, getting seed and fertilizer and everything. And we've got a couple more quotes coming in that I should have here in the next day or two. I think Commissioner Dodd might have a connection or two there that they've been using, and we want to see what they can do for us as well. Otherwise, we're getting ready to do it ourselves because our window is tightening very quickly in getting some green grass before it gets wet weather season here. So,
what do you think we can do it ourselves for? What do you think it'll cost?
Well, Co-op sent me a thing, 500 and, let me look here. It's fertilize, seed, ryegrass, fescue, Kentucky 31, shows how many pounds per acre and all that sort of stuff.
And the buggy. And the buggy,
$512.32. And, I think we can probably do it ourselves. My only thing is I don't want to get anybody hurt. I'm not going to get hurt. And there's slopes that you have to deal with, and I know there's probably a price tag that you need to pay with that, somebody that's used to doing that. But that's why I'm still looking. I've had several bids right here, and really all came in today, which I haven't been hearing from folks for 2 weeks now that I've met out there, and they're going to do it, and they're going to send me a price. But we're going to stay at it, but we're going to get it within this next week or the next and get it sown out here before it starts getting wet weather.
Have you checked with the gentleman that does the excavation and work out there to see if he could pull your buggy for you?
I have, and they can. Yes.
Yes, sir.
As long as it doesn't have hydraulics,
Is there a process for monitoring when we have long lines there? You said this was an abnormally long line, but apparently...
At Republic, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Commissioner. They report back to Tanya. She's the watch person over there, and they respect her very well. They call in and say, hey, this is taking a long time, or they're backed up, or somebody's got flats, or they've got an issue, and then they divert. And we've got it's called we call it the hill yard. It's on our property. If you've noticed, going to our landfill on the right-hand side is where they drop, on weekends and stuff when they're closed. They'll drop boxes there, either compactors or open tops, and then they'll come back and get them Monday and take them over. And if they're crowded or backed up over there, they come and drop them at Hill Yard, get an empty, and go back to the convenience center to keep them running. So it's an organized deal. It's actually works pretty good. It's pretty nice, and she's got a hold on it over there, I can tell you. So Was there anything else I was going to talk about? I think the interviews, we've interviewed 4 of the 4 folks so far on our next solid waste director, and we've got some more that unfortunately they got COVID, and we're having to work around that because we do want to give them an opportunity. On paper, they look like good people that we need to interview, so we're going to try to get that done here within the end of this week or first of next, and then try to get somebody in place. Is that correct, Mayor?
That is correct.
I think that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Very good.
Thank you.
Y'all covered the update on the director. Did you have anything?
No, sir, on the director, the gentleman, the person that came down with COVID is out of Virginia, and he came down with COVID and unable to come down. Sonia, is he still, have you talked with him? Is he willing to Zoom and let us interview him, or? I hope he's okay. Okay, we'll follow up on that. If not, then we'll close. And first round we did 4. We had 1 from Pennsylvania that withdrew, and then the one from Virginia is the only one left. And so, if we can't get hold of him, we'll go ahead and close it down, and we'll get back together and try to hone it down to 1 and get the selection.
Okay. That leads us down to other business. Mr. Chairman Cush sent me an email on contacting Caldwell Environmental Solutions. Did y'all get the email where it had been contacted about what it would cost to have the RFP drew up for reclamation of our county landfill? If we feel like we want to do this, we'll need a motion to move it to budget so the money can be appropriated. Floor is open on suggestions, comments, whatever y'all want to do. We spent a lot more money than this, and I feel like this would be a stone that we would probably wished we had turned over and looked at somewhere down the line, but it's in y'all's ballpark.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve.
And we'll need a second. Motion and a second. Do we want, let's open it for discussion then.
And, you know, to be honest, I haven't had a chance to look at the email that was sent across. What is the total cost that they're projecting?
Not to exceed $20,000. It's $150 an hour. Pretty well covers just like she did on the other, from what I can get out of the reading of it.
How soon do you think that would report come back?
Does not say. What I read on a time limit.
Well, I'm kind of like Vice Chairman Piercy. I don't think we can afford to leave any stone unturned that might help us take care of that problem.
No. I seriously don't.
Mr. Chairman, I remember us having some conversation about this.
Yes.
Back during the process, and you know, I'm not sure why the conversation tailed off. It may have just been because of all the details. We were working with all the other different opportunities that have been presented to us. But from what I recall in some of the conversations is that there were some entities out there that would be interested in bidding for that process, but they were not interested in bidding for the entire process.
Correct. Mayor?
There's a company out of North Carolina that expressed that interest early on during the RFI process. So I think we need to know.
Any other questions or concerns before we vote? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Harris,
No.
Commissioner Dodd,
No.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Piercy.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-2.
Does anyone have anything else for tonight? Have you had a chance to?
No, sir. Have not spoken to the other mayors. One was out. We were going to wait and try to do this right before Thanksgiving, see if we can find and of course, Commissioner Cush is going to be out this week after he left. So we're just trying to find a common date that all of us can get together with and sit around the table and see who all's in. But hopefully by this next month's meeting, we'll be able to come back and make a good report.
Our subcommittee left with no future meeting dates. Is that how we want to leave it for the year?
What would you anticipate being the agenda?
No, whatever they can get through the mayors, or whatever we can get back, if we can get the RFP, whatever time it takes to get it back, or whatever.
And because we had a good discussion, I think we seem to have reached a consensus on 2 or 3 components. So is it time to now I want to hear from y'all on how do we implement those 3 components, or how does a consultant drive what's next, or so it might behoove us to meet again. I don't know if we need to hear from the mayor with the mayors, or hear from Becky Caldwell. Perhaps when those 2 elements come together, we meet with 3 things on the agenda. Those 2 plus what do we do with our 2 top candidates?
Mayor?
2 things we know. Mayor's going to get together. We'll get together and talk about it. If it passes full commission next week with Becky, that will occur. I would say, as far as the subcommittee is concerned, I would just leave it subject to the call of the chair. Once, that the chair can call the subcommittee meeting, once he feels it's necessary for the subcommittee to get back together. And I think once we have these 2 things answered, then we'll be in a better position this next month.
And I just don't want to complacently push it past the end of the year. If we can meet between now and Thanksgiving, meet between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I just don't want to lose the momentum that we have, if that's okay. If of course, that's a consensus of the group.
I agree.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
is
sir.
there any way we can get the mayors together for this committee? I mean, I'd like to hear from the other mayors. We keep talking about that, but
What?
maybe not come to our committee meeting for.
I'll ask them if they're willing to do that. If Laverne or Eagleville or whoever says we're not interested, then that will determine who gets together. And they, in turn, may want us to come talk to their council as well. But I think the first step is to see who all is in. There's 5 different entities. that we'll have to sit around the table and say, yeah, we're in, we're committed, we're interested in recycling, we're interested in, step A, B, and C. And then we can sit around and talk in a roundtable discussion.
Anything else? Meeting adjourned.